Looks like goddamn Mario Kart out here.
Checkered everything.
There's something on that car.
It's a hand.
Daddy's home.
What the shit? Race control.
Right. One more car and I'm taking it out of your ass.
I'm gonna take this track and make it my bitch. Did you know that races are won and lost in the pits?
I did not know that.
Did you not?
The IMS is the best there ever was.
Daddy doesn't do road courses.
Daddy only does ovals. We certainly don't take ourselves that seriously, so you shouldn't. Welcome to Fast Cars, Fast Girls with Abby and Molly. All right, well, with us today we have Don Sklinka, who is the mastermind behind ChampWeb. So, Don, I'll let you kind of talk a little bit about ChampWeb and how you got started and how you got back into it recently.
Sure, masterminds. I'll take that term any day, I guess, but I'm not sure that's needed. Thanks to everyone too for listening. Thanks for downloading the podcast and pressing play. Appreciate it. I know this is a valuable time of year, so we appreciate it. So ChampWeb, I guess had a bit of a unique start. It wasn't a planned beginning. Originally, the intention for the website was to allow for sim racers to download a mod for an EA Sports game that was Formula One 2000, and a group of individuals modded that game and turned it into what was essentially a kart game. And so we, about 15 of us, ended up allowing for this game to be downloaded. And we needed a place for it to be downloaded, and so ChampWeb was formed, allowing for the EA Sports mod of Formula One 2000 to be downloaded for free, and it was called Kart 2K. We had around 50,000 downloads in the first week, and it ended up becoming the highest downloaded mod for any kind of racing game in 2000. So it was a pretty good success from that standpoint.
I would say so.
That's where we started getting a lot of our visitors from. And so once people started coming to the site for Kart 2K updates and like when was the next update going to happen, we started building a little bit of a following. And this was before Facebook and before YouTube and before Twitter. And so, building your following was a matter of message boards and forums and, sending hopeless emails in the sense that someone actually checks their email and responds. And so, that was kind of how ChampWeb originally came about. And then we started adding features. We started talking to drivers and allowing them to do driver diaries again before kind of blogs were a thing. We had AJ Allmendinger when he was in Barber Dodge writing driver diaries. Sebastian Bourdais when he was a rookie was doing driver diaries. Then we started doing some multilingual stuff. We had Bruno Junqueira's sister helping out with some translations into Portuguese, and we had some translations into French. And in a couple of years, we started building quite a following of just having not only sim racing news but kart news in general. And I would say kind of the big moment of ChampWeb was when Champ Car itself was going through the bankruptcy in 2003.
Yep.
We didn't have, there was no Twitter yet, and so the idea was brought up to me that someone would be in the courtroom when it was Cal Coben and Jenna Losey and Forsyth and Tony George. They were all in the courtroom. The idea was that someone would send me text messages on their phone, and then ChampWeb would put them on our site, and we charged $5 for people to see these updates for the bankruptcy hearing, and we had like 24 hours to kind of set this up, and we had about 1,500 people sign up within 24 hours to kind of check out what was going on with the bankruptcy hearing, and that really kind of legitimized ChampWeb, and that really kind of got us going on that route. So that was, and then a long story short, hopefully people haven't hit the 15-second skip ahead yet, but that's kind of where ChampWeb.
Wow. And as somebody who actually has practiced bankruptcy law and seen it, that's just not fun to sit in a bankruptcy court. So kudos to whoever you got to do that for you.
I wish I could remember. I honestly wish I could remember his name. I can't. It was, and we primarily spoke via like message board name.
Sure.
So like even if I remembered his name, it would be a message board name, and I honestly can't remember. So if you're listening, feel free to send me a direct message so I can remember who you were.
Yeah.
But it was pretty unique.
That's super unique, especially thinking about how this was all like pre-social media as we know it today. Like, I think you guys were the Twitter before Twitter, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was that's the good and bad about it, because you think about it today and you go, what if we just thought about that on a broader scale and we created a platform that was all of we just it's always better in hindsight, but
sure.
That was it was interesting, and then that led into the Champ Car days, and that's we had. There were a couple of websites that were out there too, and there's always this website banter. There's always like a positioning to who who had the best website, who had the most rumors and all that kind of stuff. And we tried to not get involved in that, but it was inevitable. It still happens. They're trying to be the owner of Twitter on IndyCar and
Sure.
only do certain things and all that kind of stuff. So the same stuff still applies 15 years ago as it does today.
It's kind of funny, isn't it? How even with all the technology, people are still the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I can keep going again.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
No, you're doing great.
hopefully people are still paying attention. The years of, I would say, 2005 on, there's 2004, 2005 they were always pretty sketchy when it came to Champ Car, and it felt like more of the news was less about the racing and more about the business side of the series and the sport, and then it became an endless battle between Champ Car and the IRL, and I know I've said it so many times that it so much energy was spent from both sides between trying to pull ahead here and trying to get the sponsor there and trying to get this driver there, and it's just a shame that if that energy was spent collectively between the two sides, where the sport would be at today. But it happened, and it's history. It's part of the sport today, and I think there's a bit of a tendency to shy away from what happened then, but there's also should be the opportunity to look at the mistakes that were made and how to improve on that as well going forward. So so ChampWeb, we were around until 2006. I was offered a position to be a consultant for the Champ Car series, and I ended up taking that position as kind of part of that contract. I had to essentially stop. I couldn't do both. I couldn't do Champ Car and also own ChampWeb, and it just became a bit of a non-disclosure agreement, if you will, that I needed to sign. And so the thought was that there wasn't much money behind ChampWeb. It was passion. There was a lot of passionate people behind it, but there wasn't much money in that sense. And at that point in my life, the opportunity with Champ Car was a good opportunity, so I took that opportunity. And then ultimately the merger did happen.
Yeah.
A very long story short, I ended up not getting the contract renewed, and at that point in time, ChampWeb had been kind of dormant for a couple of years, and I needed to move on with my life. I needed to make some money and move forward. But that's kind of where ChampWeb stopped, and then regular life kind of resumed. And it was odd because the void of IndyCar, Champ Car, whatever you want to call it, was always there. But it was such an energy drain for those 3 or 4 years that I really had to step away from it. It was just too much, and to kind of even just be a fan, it really became a struggle.
Oh, I completely understand that. And, you know, when you have something that's a passion project of yours and it becomes not fun, I think it's time to step away and take a little break. Because if you're not enjoying it, then, yeah, kind of what's the point?
That's exactly right. How did you guys, what was your reaction, back then to the, those days and when the merger happened? How did you guys react to all that?
So it's interesting. So we both were born in Speedway. Molly moved away when we were about 8 years old, and I graduated from Speedway High School. And so my first race was in '97, which was right in the heat of the split. I think the year before in '96 was when 96 or 91. Anyhow, one of those years was when Buddy Lazier won.
Yeah.
And I think it's safe to say that would not have happened if the kart drivers had been involved in the race, and more kart drivers had been involved. So it's interesting because I grew up just loving the Indy 500, and so that's where I fell in love with IndyCar. And so, I was 12 when I went to my first race, and that was right in the heat of, all the split and all the disagreements and all that. So I didn't really have any strong memories of a unified American Open Wheel series. And as it being, and so, my first 500, people who had been going for decades, said that, that year wasn't that spectacular, but for me it was awesome because it was my first 500.
Sure.
So I don't necessarily have any strong feelings one way or the other. Molly and I always joke and say, that IRL is better just because, it was associated with our home track. But, at the end of the day, it was just, too many people who kind of got into a pissing match and couldn't come to an agreement.
Yeah, I mean, and I think everyone underestimated, what exactly happened with you guys. I think they underestimated the power of the Indy 500.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You're saying you were introduced to the sport after that, but you were introduced via the Indy 500, and I think that that is ultimately what the power of the sport is. And that's how my initial memories. I was kind of brought up through via my dad and uncle. They did race go-karts, and then, the Cleveland Grand Prix was kind of my local track and kind of got introduced there, but it was always Indy 500, and it was always the memories of, getting together with your family, watching the Indy 500, and that was it. And everything else, was a support mechanism of that race, and I think that it's a shame how it ended up happening, but the power of the Indy 500 is what drives the sport, and it's obviously great that it's back again.
It is. It's awesome. Yeah, I think it really, there were lots of factors, but I think the fact that, the Holman family owns the IMS and that they have the Indy 500 was really the defining factor in, in kart ultimately going bankrupt. Which is, I'm glad that everybody came back together. And Molly and I, we did a special, our Valentine's Day episode was about the split, because we thought, breakups. And I said it's interesting because we're at a place now that it's like when, two people get divorced and there's some animosity, they've got kids and they've got to kind of figure it out. And then once their kids have kids and you've got grandkids, everybody's coming to baptisms and, christenings, everybody's coming to school events and birthday parties and all that. And it's, it's been enough years that, everybody can get along again. And so I kind of feel like as American Open Wheel racing has gotten to the place where, we've got grandkids now, it's been enough time, we all can get along and move forward.
That's a great analogy. That's where I think it's at right now. I think it's at this place where, there's almost a hesitancy for whoa, we're getting along, everything's good, let's not mess with anything. I think that the drivers themselves, I think they work so hard to get these sponsors and to sign these sponsors and to get them to come on board for, whether it's one race or a whole season, that you don't want to say anything that's politically incorrect. You want to, make sure that everything is polished. And I think that you have this let's not say anything wrong. Let's not say anything bad. We want to make sure everyone is happy, keep everyone happy. And I think it's good for the sport from a business side, but I think it also it detracts a little bit from the competitive aspect, which draws people into the sport. It draws people into, why do I like this driver versus this driver? Why do I like this team versus this team? I think it becomes, if IndyCar would kind of say, it's okay that you don't like this driver, but you like this driver. It's okay that this driver doesn't like this driver. It's okay that you were in Champ Car and you were in IRL. It's okay. Like,
yeah.
Bringing those feelings to life rather than kind of brushing them over and feeling and letting them pretend like they weren't there. But, we're all one now. Embrace it. But also, it's okay to have a little bit of a position on certain things.
Absolutely.
That helps bring some conversation. It brings some competition. It brings some interest. And I think that's where the IndyCar is kind of teetering right now. They're teetering on this. Are we going to keep going straight, or are we going to kind of allow a little bit more flexibility within the series and a little bit more emotion?
I completely agree. I think that, there is almost an overly cautious attitude of not wanting to rock the boat, and
right.
It's almost like you want to say, there's not going to be another split. It's fine. Everybody can show their personalities, because, 30
right.
years ago, drivers didn't think twice about what they said.
Right.
AJ Foyt didn't think twice about picking up a wrench and walking down pit road. So, I think that it's a little bit sanitized, but I also think that, but I also feel like that has been changing in the last couple seasons as well, and improving. And I think that sponsors are starting to appreciate, well, and also with, so the advent of social media and how it's becoming such a big deal, I think that, there is some growth in that area that we're seeing, and I hope that continues. Like with the autograph battle with, Simon and Joseph, just publicly being silly and doing things like that. That's not something we would have seen 8 years ago.
No. For sure. We definitely would not have. And there is that opportunity that exists. And that's, kind of go full circle. That's a little bit where ChampWeb was, the idea of bringing it back. I was literally just sitting there watching St. Petersburg and, kind of seeing, okay, this could be improved upon. This is an interesting highlight. This is an interesting clip, and the idea of using a platform that can highlight certain aspects of the series, good, bad, ugly, great, whatever that may be, and allowing for the fans to truly comment on situations and comment on. When this driver made this pass, and in that race it was Rossi and Wickens getting together at the end of the race, and that became obviously and still is something to talk about amongst fans, which is needed. And so the idea with ChampWeb was to allow for moments to be created and allow for moments, whether it was current moments or moments in the past, or to allow those moments to be shown. And allow the fans to comment on those moments, and the hope that there's improvements that can be made, or if there's hope that there's the idea of competition, the idea of interest levels going up. The more people that talk about a sport, or more people that talk about a certain moment, the greater that will help the series. So. That's where ChampWeb was kind of reformed. It's a hobby of mine. It's not a full-time job. And the idea was to take this year and just start it and see how it goes, and then react at the end of the season. If and how it should evolve. But so far, the fact that I'm on here talking with you guys I think is an honor, and it's great. And I think that this is again part of the sport growing. The more of these things that can happen, the better for the series. And I'm hoping that ChampWeb can play a small part of that again.
Absolutely. Well, and I love how many video clips you do. And honestly, I was going to ask if you just have files and files of IndyCar races stored somewhere, because I don't think I have enough hours in the day to post that many clips. But I love that you do clips from recent races, and you do clips from older races. and it starts a dialogue, because we've got new fans that, we got fans that never knew IndyCar during the split. They never knew anything about it.
Yeah.
And then you've got these, very seasoned fans who felt really strongly one way or the other, but like we said, we're all unified now, but still when you show, because I love that you show old IRL and old kart and old, pre-split, and it's interesting. I always enjoy following the conversation, and then seeing, some of our, the seasoned fans make comparisons between current drivers and older drivers, and and so to be able to have a video, to kind of see that for people who wouldn't necessarily go and seek out those older races on their own. I think that that's a really cool thing that you do.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it, and it's you see it in other sports too. I mean, I grew up in an area again near Akron, Ohio, and I went to Akron University. So the NBA and LeBron James, I've been kind of following him, his whole career. He's approximately the same age as me, so when kind of followed him in the NBA for the last 15 or 20 years, and it's something of a similar use, and there's always that past and present comparison with LeBron and Michael Jordan and
Absolutely.
Kobe Bryant and all that kind of stuff. And I think, for the new fans in the NBA that just came in for LeBron, like, it's important to see that history. It's important to see, what was there before, and how the athletes performed in the past, and how the game was slightly different. The stats are all, you have similar ways of wins and losses and points and blocks. The stats are the same, but the way that the game was played was different. And I think that it's important, similar in IndyCar racing, it's a similar analogy in the sense that, right now we're looking at a 1993 race in Cleveland, and there were 29 cars, which, you would say, that's great. There's 29 cars, but realistically, 4 or 5 of those cars had a chance to win that race. And so, when you start thinking about how you want the future of IndyCar to be, where do you want it? Do you want, 15 to 20 cars that have 15 cars that kind of have a chance to win the race, and have incredible parity throughout the entire series? Or do you want it where you can concentrate on smaller stories, meaning you can concentrate on Alonso Jr. versus Emerson Fittipaldi, because there's really only 5 or 6 cars that can win the race, and allows you to build those stories. So again, it's the idea of taking that past, and how do you bring that into the present, into the future.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that your comparison with like LeBron and Michael Jordan is perfection, because I don't know that I think it will be. I think I'll be dead before people stop comparing basketball stars to Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And and I think that we have a lot of we have a lot of awesome drivers in our history that anybody now is going to be compared to, because in the last 50 years, I mean, the speeds have changed so much, the cars have changed so much. There's been all of these advancements, right, and all of these record breaking and Hall of Fame worthy moments and drivers that it just makes sense that you would look at the comparisons and kind of compare and contrast.
Yeah, exactly. And the safety, it's a shame, because in order to make any kind of safety enhancement, it seems that it required an incident of sorts. Mm-hmm. It required some type of accident in order for an engineer or a designer to go, okay, we need to do something different. And I think that the next level there is, the idea of a windshield or, some type of closed cockpit. I think, we've seen enough incidents that could prevent it. But again, that's part of the evolution of the sport. And, that's where you go, well, 15, 20, 30 years ago, they didn't need that, they didn't have that. But again, they didn't know about it. And so when you add those type of safety enhancements and innovations, that's inevitably going to probably take something away from the car from some other aspect. Either that's it's going to weigh more, or it's going to not go as fast on the straights. It's going to create more drag. Something along those lines. That when you continue to add safety enhancements and improvements, that you don't want to see people get hurt in these cars.
Sure. That
you're going to take away from other things. So it's that's part of that. As you see, a car from 1990, how it improved to 1995, how it improved to 2000, how it improved to now. It's obviously good to understand that evolution of racing, so that you can't just go out and say, okay, we're going to turn 250 at Indy and just go do it. Like, there has to be an evolution there.
Yeah. I say you can't just go out there and run a car at 250 without any downforce, because at 235 you take flight. That's the speed that's needed for airplanes. So
exactly.
So excuse me. So this time around, you were on Twitter only. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's just, quite frankly, my full-time job is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's kind of hard enough to do these. This is a hobby, and kind of do these clips, as it is. So I wanted kind of the smallest footprint possible in order to manage that footprint, and so at this point it's just Twitter, and again, maybe evaluating off season, maybe a website would be used, but again, as soon as you start opening up more platforms, it makes the job exponentially more difficult. So just wanted to go dip my toes in the ocean first and then see how it went.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how do you think it is, kind of comparing, you guys had the full website and everything else when you first started to now just doing it solely on Twitter? How do you feel Twitter is that better for you, do you think, than the full website, or is there a lot of differences?
That's a great question. So, and that, it kind of coincides with my kind of full-time job, but I think where users are going today, everything is consumed for the most part on your phone, and you're either in transit, or you're looking at it on a small screen. 10 or 15 years ago, everything was website based, and you'd be lucky to kind of get bite-sized bits of news. Now, the attention spans have decreased with the advent of Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, that in order to appease your users and your customers, you got to create bite-sized pieces of content. And, it's hard to justify writing full-length articles and having photographers, out at the track and taking all this time and effort to put together these illustrious, articles that come out. And, when at the same time, as soon as you post that article, and, Racer, I go to Racer for news.
Yeah.
And, they spend all this time and money on producing this content in this article. And then as soon as they post it, I have the ability to go and click retweet, and essentially, I take credit for it, right? Like it's now posted from a ChampWeb feed, and so it's not how it should be, but that's kind of how it is. And so the ability to reproduce content in bite-sized manner is kind of the way news and editorial is becoming. And not to keep rehashing it, but back in the Champ Car days, it was such a struggle to get websites media credentials. It was in 2003 and 4 and 5, like that. You have a website? That's okay, great, good for you.
Right. Congratulations.
We're only going to give it to newspapers and the magazines, and then you have to prove that you have X amount of visitors, and so like to give it to a website.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, we still have to do that.
Right. And
Molly wrote a dissertation. The last media creds we applied for, they just asked a few questions because podcast is kind of a new thing, and Molly, being the good attorney that she is, basically wrote a dissertation on why podcast is the biggest up and coming media, and it was fabulous. We got the creds, but yeah, we do still have to do that, which is interesting, because even after all this time, the more traditional media is still automatically accepted in, and those of us who are in the newer media kind of have to prove ourselves a little more.
Yeah, and that's where the evolution is going to have to be on IndyCar's behalf. And that's where we talk about creating moments. A newspaper, no offense to them, isn't going to be able to create a moment anymore. Like it takes too long for that to happen. A magazine isn't going to be able to create moments for IndyCar. They, by the time someone gets a magazine, it's been 3 weeks since something has happened there.
Absolutely.
And so IndyCar is going to have to move, their flexibility from a media credential standpoint to allow for newer media types. And it's going to make people nervous because, oh my God, what have you done? All you've done is start a Twitter feed. All you've done is started a Facebook page. And why do you deserve a media credential? But that's where that flexibility is going to have to happen to allow for, new fans and new customers to come in. That's the route that it's going to go, and to create bite-sized moments and pieces of content. That's where the flexibility is going to have to happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because again, it's about starting those conversations and keeping those conversations going, and stirring that excitement within the fan base.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the access at the track, or you don't have access to the drivers, you don't have access to the media interviews, it becomes even more of a delay. So the idea of getting that content up there as quick as possible to the greatest amount of people possible, that should be the goal of the sport. Not what media outlet you happen to be a part of. It should be who has potential to help grow our sport.
Absolutely. And I will say, and we plug IndyCar Nation all the time. But yeah, they contacted us in early May and wanted to, have us work with them, or which has been just fantastic. And so I will say, it's coming. It's definitely in the process. And so yeah, they've allowed us to partner with them for all of the IndyCar races that we're going to live, and they definitely recognize that the social media game is the fastest growing source for news for fans, and everything else. I say it's really where IndyCar fans are growing. It's where all the conversations are happening.
Well, that's great. I'm glad that they're being supportive of you guys.
Yeah, no, they've been absolutely awesome with us. And like you said, if you don't have access to drivers, we've lucked out with a few interviews just just by kind of being in the right place at the right time, meeting the right people. And Molly and I, we always say that we're adorably non-threatening. So we get a lot of people to agree to interviews just because, we're two women, and it's like, we're Midwestern polite, it's fine.
That's one thing I don't have. I don't think I'm going to be adorably non-threatening. I think that's probably going to be tough for me.
It's a skill.
Yeah, I say we were trained to be that way. We were raised to be that way. But with IndyCar Nation, they've absolutely opened the door for us to have interviews with drivers that definitely would have not returned our emails if it had just been us by ourselves. So yeah, that's definitely something that they've helped with. And it's kind of, once you get your foot in the door, then then people start to know you. And so, I would say, even comparing now the beginning of July with the beginning of May, I would say it's night and day difference.
Yeah.
That's great.
So you've also started to do, I know one of the big things you're doing is the video content, but you recently, I'm not 100% sure when you started to do this, sort of like the final thoughts after each race, which I think is a lot of fun. Can you kind of, like, how did that come about? Like, were you just like, you know what, I got some thoughts?
Yeah, I don't really know exactly. It was just, I guess it was just, I went to the Detroit race, and it was 1,000,000 degrees, and I went back to my Airbnb and was just sitting there and started thinking about who kind of finished last and second last, and said, okay, well, I got a thought there, and and then just said, okay, well, why don't we just see what we can do within the Twitter's character limit for each aspect of the series, and I feel like it's went well. I've had, there's been some drivers that have agreed with some things, and there's been a couple of drivers, or maybe one that has disagreed with it. And
who disagreed?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I think it was just maybe a little bit of miscommunication there. Am I characterizing that right?
Yeah, it was Tony Kanaan, who I respect greatly. Did not like the thought that I put out there for the tweet, and you can only say so much in a limited amount of space.
Yeah.
also have only so much grammar that you can include at certain times, and you don't want to have 15 kind of tweets to kind of get a message across. And so,
Sure.
Ultimately, my message was that, I think that the AJ4 team has underperformed based on what I think Tony's expectations are for himself. I don't know that he enjoys or feels like, fighting for 15th is where he feels like he should be. That's my assumption there. As a result of that assumption, I said that there's, the team may need to make a change. The change, wasn't intended upon that Tony Kanaan needed to get out of the seat or Matthias Lees needs to get out of the seat or anything like that.
Sure.
But, I found it hard to believe that come Monday, just like any organization, any business, if you lose a pitch and you come, after the pitch, you figure out what you can do better and do something different. And I felt as though the team, might need to change things. And I actually got a direct message from one of the team members, and there was some changes. I didn't want to post that, but
sure.
So that was the intent. The intent was A, and I think the reaction ended up being X. And so, that's part of the deal. Not everything has to be a love fest at all times. I'm not here to be a shock jock type individual either. But I think that unfortunately the idea of final tweets are to run from last to first, and there's gonna be a last place finisher and there's gonna be a first place finisher, and so it's gonna be hard to kind of say, well, you finished 23rd, but everything was perfect. It's just kind of a nature of the idea that I probably didn't initially anticipate.
Well, I think it's actually it's a very interesting idea, and I appreciate reading through it. I think part of it is what my mom always says to me is that when you write something down and it's in written communication, you lose, how 90% of communication. But I also think, with us talking about everything moving on to social media, and especially I think Twitter or Facebook is where you get the most engagement. Not everybody's going to agree with you, but you're not, as long as you're not out there going well, you're an idiot, we can have a civilized discussion, which I think is what these kind of final thought, last thought tweets you're doing kind of are you know what, something needs to kind of happen, because we've said it before too, they're not performing how they should be, so something needs to be tweaked or fixed or whatever. So
and it's clearly, when the name AJ Foyt Racing, you expect it to perform well.
Yeah.
And also, they've changed drivers quite frequently, and it's not making any difference in their performance. So. Yep.
Those are. I agree with both of those statements. And the other thing with IndyCar in general is that it's a traveling circus, and what tends to happen is that it becomes hype come Wednesday. And then Thursday you get a little bit more of the PR blitz, and then Friday we're finally on the track, and Saturday you get some qualifying stories, and Sunday, oh my God, this race, and then ends, and then you go on to the next one. And what has always lacked is kind of the analysis after the fact and the stories coming from the race itself. Everyone seems to kind of be so hell-bent on what's next, what's the next race, what's next. There has been very little time to allow for, what actually did happen on the race. It was an hour and a half, 2-hour event on TV, and you got to see 60% of what actually happened in the race. It's hard to cover the entire thing, and there becomes a lack of discussion about the racing, and that's what's been missing for so long. Is there's always been all discussion about the split and discussion about sponsors and engine manufacturers and chassis, but what has been lacking, which is why I kind of got back into it, was the idea of talking about the racing again. And it seemed as though the last couple of years we started getting back into the idea of racing and making passes on the track and what actually happened during these events. And so that's kind of also where it's built upon, is that allow for a conversation to be had on the race, about the race after the race, and it doesn't have to immediately go on to the next event that the circus is going to. Let's sit it for a second and let's talk about what happened and let the fans comment on it and allow people to take sides, and maybe someone's going to get mad, but allow for that conversation to happen.
Well, absolutely, because with that those conversations are happening among the teams.
Yes.
There's I mean, that's every job that you ever have, you have a big event, you do it, there's an evaluation afterwards. What did we do right? What can we do better? And so I think it's awesome to involve the fans in that. And, I think that, having a Twitter like yours, that does, kind of instigate's not the right word. But I say, because it's not a negative, not instigate like in a negative way, but, kind of starts conversations, so that people can have those conversations is awesome. Because a lot of IndyCar corporate have been, they do move right on to the next race, but it's because they're promoting themselves, and we want to get more viewers, and we want to have, higher numbers in our ratings and all of that. And so I understand where they're coming from, but I definitely appreciate the conversations that get started with your Twitter, and just so that we all can kind of go back and examine the race. And I hope that as we grow fans, that we get to a place where, even the corporate IndyCar, allows for that discussion, and, and gets in on going back and looking things over, and, talking about what could have gone better and things like that.
Yeah, that's right. As the official series, your hands are tied in certain things that you can do. We, all of us are privy to about 2% of 1% of, the meetings that are happening every day, and the sponsorship conversations that are happening. And, if you say something here or there, how that could affect, potential decision made by someone else. And so, very aware of, those potential happenings, that are going on. So, they don't want to take a certain stance on something, or to appear to be biased in any kind of way. So I totally understand, that exists, and due to that existing, I do think there was a void there, or there is a void, and I think that that's part of where we wanted ChampWeb to kind of help fill in, is help be that voice of the fans, and allow for them to be heard, and discuss opinions, and some of those opinions may warrant some type of reactions from drivers, but that's good. We're all for a driver to working respond to a driver that quickly, and I think it's great. Unfortunately, we might have made Tony Kanaan an enemy of ours, which was not intentional. But I think at the end of the day, it's still great. Look, we're talking about it. It's a moment. It's an event. It's generating interest.
Well, and if people are disagreeing, and getting a little heated about something is not a bad thing. I mean, when you're passionate about something, you care about something, it's impossible to not get a little heated from time to time when you discuss it. So
that's right.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's great. And I love that, drivers have kind of gotten involved in that conversation. And I feel like, these conversations have been happening face to face. When you have friends that are race fans and you watch races together, Molly and I know when we watch races together, we hang out for at least an hour afterwards, and we discuss everything during the race ad nauseum. Yeah. I mean, not even including doing our race report podcast, just the two of us, we go through everything before we even record, and, discuss all that. And so I think, having that discussion move to Twitter really helps connect fans as well. I know that even before our podcast started, on my personal Twitter, I had, connected with so many fun IndyCar fans, and it really creates a family, makes it feel like a much smaller group of people than it actually is. And I think it fosters, people meeting up and getting to know each other face to face at races they're all going to, and yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And again, I don't like creating same analogies for stick and ball sports because it's a different beast. But it's similar to finding, if you're from Cleveland, you like the Cavs, and so you're gonna find other Cavs fans to discuss things with, and you're gonna discuss things with the Chicago Bulls fans. You're gonna have differing opinions, but you're all fans of the NBA. Yeah. And same thing with kind of any sport. The idea is sure, there's going to be fans of Tony Kanaan, and there's going to be fans of Connor Daly, perhaps, and they're going to maybe have differing opinions, of that situation, and that's okay. That's a sport. That's what it should be. But allowing you to become, like you were saying, allowing these kind of micro groups to kind of talk to each other and to allow for them to kind of expand their thoughts more than just your local, people at a bar or your family or your close friends. That is what it should be all about, and that, eventually will help grow the series.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
Absolutely. Okay, so what was your first? So you said your first introduction to IndyCar was also the Indy 500?
Well, it was more or less the Cleveland Grand Prix. So I grew up about 30 minutes south of Cleveland, and my memories were I would always get to go on Friday. My brother would go on Saturday, and then my uncle would go with my dad on Sunday for the race, or maybe it was my uncle going on Saturday. Anyways, I would get to go Friday, and it was all Cleveland was always in the middle of the summertime, and it always had to be like 150 degrees up in the grandstand.
Well, and part of that course is on a runway, isn't it?
Yeah, it was on the Burke Lakefront Airport, so it was kind of like a private jet airport. That,
but still, no trees or shade anywhere near.
Right, none, zero. And the grandstands were not shaded whatsoever, and they were, luckily we would get our typical seat at the very top of the grandstands, but it would still be just incredibly crazy hot. And so I would, we get there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 10 o'clock in the morning I'd want to go home because I'd just be sweating like crazy. Yeah. But that was the first introduction, and I can still, hear the turbos popping over top of the bumps on the runway, to this day. And like those are the small memories that, as IndyCar fans come to various races today, those are the small things that, 15, 20 years from now that they're going to remember. It's those small interactions, those small moments. Oh, I got to see Jacques Villeneuve, or I saw him get out of his car. Like those are the small things that introduce people to the sport, and that kind of got me. And then we had we still do. We have kind of a family tradition of always watching the Indy 500 as getting together, whether it's at my uncle's house, my dad's house, my house, whatever. And it's now been going on since I was 6, and my dad and uncle had been watching it since the late 70s. So, they're going on 40 some years straight of watching it, the Indy 500 together. And so that's, like I was saying, like that was always the nucleus of the sport, was Indy 500. And so, I just, the fact that I lived by Cleveland and by Mid-Ohio, I was surrounded by, road racing and Champ Car and kart. So like, it was almost a logistics thing for me of where I got introduced to the sport.
Certainly. What's your favorite race that you've ever been to? You can actually do a few. Every time we say favorite, we're like, you can pick like 3 or 5, because we can never just pick one favorite. So
yeah, I love the Toronto races. It was always more than a race. It was always an event. And the Toronto fans, the Canadian fans, are great. They're really knowledgeable about the series, and going up there, it just felt like a second home. I would typically bring my friends with me to Toronto, so we were able to have a good time in addition to watching the race itself. And so, from an event attendance perspective, any of the races have always been fun. And the course is as close to downtown as kind of you can get. And there's always great hospitality there, and a lot of different vantage points around the race track. So, I encourage anyone that has the opportunity to get to Toronto to give it a go. It's more than just a race up there. It's definitely an event.
It's definitely on our list. I'm not eligible to enter Canada yet this year. But as of August, after I file some paperwork, I should be okay for Toronto.
Do we want to know that story? Do your fans want to know that story?
Oh, I've told it before.
Told them,
Okay.
Yeah, it's a DUI. 10 years, and so it's not 10 years from the incident. It's 10 years from the completion of probation or jail time or whatever you did. I did probation. I want to be clear about that. So at 10 years, it's just automatically forgiven. It's applied rehabilitation. It's deemed rehabilitation. So after 10 years, because they code it differently up there, so it can either be a felony or a misdemeanor. So when it can be either, they default to the higher crime. So they deem it a felony. So after 10 years, it'd just be gone altogether. But after 5 years, which will be this August, so 6 years from the incident, but 5 from the end of probation, I can send in paperwork that shows that I've been a productive member of society and haven't gotten in trouble and this and that. And then I get an official pardon from the Canadian government, basically. And so as far as Canada is concerned, I never had a DUI. So then I should be clear.
I also like Milwaukee, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people who I think would like to see Milwaukee come back.
Yeah.
So, okay, growing up, who was your favorite driver? And then who's your favorite driver now?
I don't know why I always like the color of the Players Foresight paint scheme. And it always seemed like when he was counted out, he would end up finding a way to win. And it was odd because he was only in the sport for 2 years, only in IndyCar, truly 94 as a rookie, 95, and then he went to Formula One. And so then it all just kind of meshed together that like the split happened, and then Jacques went to Formula One. So I actually started following Formula One for a bit. Then he won the world championship in '97, and
I wish I would have known he was your
all meshed a little bit together there. So my short answer to that would be Villeneuve.
Okay. Sorry, I'm a bad interrupter. I was gonna say I wish I would have known that. I had a friend who sold a really cool matted picture frame that had a sticker from Villeneuve's pit, a signed photograph, and I think a glove or something that her dad had. So
nice. That's another topic is that merchandise. I've started to see people have been taking interest in when we have these things called Diecast Tuesdays, where we just kind of put a diecast out there, maybe some merchandise or some other type of IndyCar memorabilia, and it seems to get a decent response. And that's something that I think is cool, that I think other people that aren't race fans kind of think is nerdy and weird. But I think that's an opportunity again for race fans to say, hey, other people also collect this stuff, and I have a tire, or I have a suit, or I have a photograph that's signed, whatever it may be. And I think that's also another way that we're trying to kind of bring fans together, is allowing them to kind of display what their merchandise is, or what are the things that they're proud of. And every bit of merchandise has their own memory with it too, and not everything is necessarily a monetary value. It's it's sentimental, and what this is about in that point in your life, and it has different memories for different people. So anyways, that's a little bit of a side subject to your Jacques Villeneuve merchandise.
No, absolutely, I completely agree. And I'll say so I'm a big eBay user, and probably 8 years ago I started just acquiring different Indy 500 and IndyCar merchandise on eBay. And I will say the availability of what's there is so much less now. I think there's so many more people interested in some of the vintage merchandise, and the prices are so much higher. I got full sets of like the really nice tumbler glasses with like the gold rim. I got 4 packs of those with different years that listed all the drivers for less than $10, and now you'd be lucky to get that for $30. And it's
for sure.
It's very interesting. But like a lot of it's not monetary value. I've got a really cool. It's not a photograph. It's like a painting. But it's Vukovic, and it's a picture of his car. And it's got a picture of him. It's a really nice matted framed piece. And my, an aunt that's not actually by blood, but it belonged to her sister, who was a yellow shirt in the garages for years and years and years. And Bill's wife gave this to her and wrote her a very sweet letter. And that's on the back of it. And so when Mary passed away, Zora gave it to me because I love the Indy 500 so much. And so it's like that. I'm like, I have no idea what it's worth money-wise, but like the value to me, the personal value to it, like off the charts.
Yeah, exactly. That also kind of brings up another topic, is that or I guess a good segue, if you will. Yeah, so I'm a Midwesterner. I grew up in Cleveland.
Yep.
You live in Chicago now. I think that's pretty Midwestern.
Oh, yeah.
The idea of the Indy 500 to me growing up, it felt like the Indy 500 was in California. Like it felt so far away, and until I started like actually understanding distance and whatnot, it felt so far away. And until recently, I didn't get to go there. I was telling you that we watched it as a family, and so just didn't make the trek down. But since I moved to Chicago, I started making the trek down, and easy 3-hour drive, whatever.
Yeah.
And I feel like I am a pretty die-hard race fan. I felt there's a scale of 1 to 10. I feel like I'm up there. I'm like a 9.
Yeah.
I'm in that ballpark. And when I get to Indy, I feel like I'm a 1 compared to.
Isn't it wild?
The people, the diehard. I mean, you just said you were born in Speedway, Indiana. Like it's in your blood. Like it truly is in your blood, and you don't realize it until you get to the track, and you're like, oh my God, there's people that are way more into this and have many more stories and have bigger things at stake than I do in this. And I think it's great, and you just don't realize it until you get to Indy, until you are literally there in the stadium and in that city. You just don't realize it, and it's incredible. And obviously, I think you two are a prime example of this, and it's incredible how Speedway, Indiana, and that city is just a completely a race fan crazy city. It really is incredible.
It really is. It's very special. And I say we definitely mentioned this on here before, but Speedway has 4 elementary schools, and they're named after the 4 founders of the IMS. Like learning about the history of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway was just part of standard elementary education.
Right.
I mean, like every year in May, it was like every grade you learned a new piece. And I went to Carl G. Fisher Elementary, so we focused on him. But yeah, it was like every year in May, that was just part of our, social studies lessons was learning about the Indy 500.
Right. That's an unbelievable example, but that's exactly right. Like I feel like an outsider just you telling me that story. Like you've been doing this your entire life, and it's been part of your entire life. And for me, I'm almost like an outsider fan when you get there, and it's incredible. Like you don't realize it until you're amongst everyone else. It's interesting.
It is. I will say that I think Molly and I both feel this way. Obviously, we feel perfectly comfortable at the Indy 500 because that's our home track. It's our home race. But now that we've been going out of town to more IndyCar races, even if it's our first time somewhere, our very first race was, out of town was Mid-Ohio. And we knew nobody else that was going to be there. In fact, the person that we knew the best that was going to be there was Beth Bowles, and that was only because she had picked us to win a 500 Fashion Friday contest. So we had spoken 3 times and had taken a few selfies, and we knew nobody else. And we went there, and it was like we were just family. Yeah. I think that it's such a great atmosphere. And like we've talked about, that we've overcome the split. We're to this, this unification place, and we're growing as a series, as a sport. We're growing with fans. And I mean, we 100% felt that. I mean, we weren't there for more than 20 minutes before our neighbors came over and asked if there was anything they could do to help us set up our tent, if we needed help, unloading the car, if we needed ice. I mean, just checking on us. And they were like, okay, well, we're right down here. Here's our names. If you need anything, let us know. And it wasn't like a condescending because we're women. It wasn't any of that. It was just genuine Midwestern politeness. And I mean, we just immediately made friends and felt right at home.
Yeah, exactly. I think as fans from different areas, I think we've all seen or been to tracks, and we're like, oh man, there's no one here, or this is bad. We've been through the bad parts and the bad times, and
sure.
And I think when you see the effort being made by others to kind of get to where you are or grow the series, I think everyone is part of it. And that goes back to, we might like this driver or that driver, might have this opinion or that opinion, but at the end of the day, we are all part of this as a fan base to help grow a series that, we all know has the potential to get be where it should be. And I think that's part of it. I think it's, we don't want to detract customers and fans, and we don't want to, have people come to the races that we go to all the time and make them walk away and go, I'm never going back there again. Like that's not, I don't think what any of us want in any of the places that we grew up in. So I think that's a good example. I think that's good. That's part of it.
Absolutely. And you know what? I realized you never answered who your favorite driver now is.
Oh, sorry, I didn't get that one. Well, I have to go with Bourdais. There's a bit of we have a bit of a history at least. He was pretty involved with ChampWeb when he was kind of coming up through Champ Car, and this was a topic that I tweeted about. I can't believe I'm even saying that. I tweeted about it, but and Bourdais, like, I feel like they're never going to get the credit that they deserve for the amount of wins that they had, because so many of those wins, a good bulk of those wins, came during the split. Like Bourdais had.
Oh yeah.
Who's listening to this is probably going to say, "No, you're wrong." I think he had he had 30-some wins, and Dixon, I think, is in the 40s.
Well, and he had two. Didn't he have two championships with kart?
Yeah, Bourdais won three in a row.
Yeah, okay.
And that was an unheard of thing. But the third title in 2006, I think it was. It was. Or 7 maybe it was. The fields were, you had 17 cars in the races, and he had, so like you look at those and go, yeah, but everything is but, and everything is an asterisk and things like that, and that's and so I've enjoyed Bourdais fighting with what would be I would definitely say as a smaller team with Coyne and seeing Vassar back in the series and whatnot. I think again, I think it brings that heritage aspect to the series, and I think it allows for a little bit of a connection to those fans that were back there back in 05, 06, 07 to kind of give a rooting interest in today. And again, I feel like that he's not getting he won't get the credit that he deserves until the future. Same with Dixon. Like they're so good, and they were so good during what happened to be a hardship time for IndyCar racing as a whole. But I think they're both showing now, hey, they're winning still. They're still winning now, and hopefully, that shows that these guys are still awesome, and they're still the top drivers in the series.
And I think that, there's a lot to be said for that, because they are, they're not spring chickens. Dixon's 37, right. And Bourdais 38, isn't he? 38 or 39?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I remember when we actually learned his age right around the 500 this year, and neither one of us realized that he was that old. Not that late 30s is old, but for an IndyCar driver it is, though.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, and it just put that even more into perspective with his wreck in 2017, and all of the physical therapy and rehabilitation that he had to do. It's a lot harder to bounce back from that in your late 30s than it is in your early 30s.
Yeah.
I do feel like that earned Bourdais a lot of the street cred that he deserved.
Yeah, for sure. I felt like he's got a couple of kids, and he's done well in his life, and I felt like coming out of that wreck, I don't think anyone would have said, oh, really? If he said I'm going to retire, and
absolutely,
that's a lot of work to get that rehab, back going, and then to do all that, and then to win the season opener. Like that's a phenomenal story. Story that everyone should know, whether you like IndyCar racing or not, and that's the type of stuff that the sport should help promote.
100%.
Absolutely. Well, and I had the opportunity to speak with one of his sponsors at the victory banquet for the 2017 Indy 500. And 2 days after his crash, the doctor said, there's no way you're going to be back this season. You're out for the rest of the season. This is how long your rehab is going to be, and this and that. And he said, nope, I'm going to be back before the season's over. And so it was, almost like there was just no hesitation. He was like, nope, that's not acceptable. I will be back this season. Like, I will be back, and I'll be back this season. The
interesting part about it now is I think back in the Champ Car days, I think people were like annoyed with Bourdais. He kept winning, and I think there was
He was like the Yankees.
French animosity and things like that. It was kind of weird, and I think people are like, all right, Bourdais winning, Newman Haas. All right, we get it. And now I think you're seeing everyone go, wow, the dude is really good, and he's really fast. So that was a long-winded answer to your question.
No, we appreciate it. All right, well, we're gonna.
The other side reason, this is kind of a funny story, is I was doing. I was at the Cleveland race. I was part of in the media at that time with ChampWeb, and I had this tiny electric scooter that you would plug into the wall, and you take the scooter because the media center was so far away from the track in Cleveland, and like I was saying, it's always 1,000,000 degrees. So I happened to have the scooter, and so I parked the scooter, by the media center, and would drive it through the paddock and the pit area. And I had glasses at the time, and kind of had a similar haircut as Bourdais. And so, like, I just paused my scooter to kind of check something at the time, and all of a sudden, like, these 3 or 4 kids came running up to me, and they're like, Sebastian, sign this. And I was like, well, all right. So I just kind of signed it, Sebastian Bourdais. I have no idea, what the autograph looks like nowadays, but to a couple of kids 10, 15 years ago, I looked like Bourdais, and so that's all good enough for me.
Oh, I love that rather than, like, break their hearts and say, no, I'm not Sebastian, that you just signed it.
You're like, yeah, sure, whatever, kids.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
And maybe somewhere they're telling a story now that, their introduction to racing was they got an autograph from Sebastian Bourdais.
And that he was super nice. And years from now, their children will try and sell that, and then somebody will say, that is not his signature. This is a fraud. This is worth nothing.
That happens.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Oh, goodness.
Have you ever met Sebastian Bourdais and told him that story?
I've met him. A bunch of times. I don't think I told him that story.
I think you should. I feel like he would find that very amusing. I mean, he's a good sport.
A little bit later, I think now you would find it funny.
Yeah, I say maybe not right at the time, but yeah, I think at this point, I think that that's very funny. Oh, all right. Well, Don, we are gonna wrap up a little bit here because I think we've kept you on here for quite a while, but we've loved every minute of it. So thank you again so much.
Where can we find him? Where can we find you?
Yes, I was getting there.
All right.
So yes. All right. So your Twitter is at ChampWeb.
Yeah, ChampWebDotNet, but hopefully by now you can just type in ChampWeb and it should be one of the 3. There's a guy named Jules Champagne that refuses to respond to me, and he has the ChampWeb Twitter address, so I had to add .net on that one.
I wonder if it's an inactive account, if you can report it to Twitter, and maybe they'll deactivate it.
I went that route. I went that route just to get some activity, and I haven't succeeded yet. So in the meantime, it's going to have an additional .net at the end of it.
Gotcha. Well,
it happens, unfortunately.
It happens, yeah. So,
yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you again so much. Any final thoughts before we let you go, Don?
No, just again, if any, all the listeners that have managed to stay through this, all my boring stories, I hope that you guys enjoyed them. And again, thank you guys for having me on. And let's do this again. I think this is a great opportunity for the series to again connect fans with fans and connect drivers with fans. And I think it's all positive. And so any way that I can help support you guys, just reach out, let me know, and it's all for the better. And again, hopefully everyone as fans can understand that we're here as one, and we're trying to help grow the series. So thanks everyone, and thank you guys.
Well, thank you very much. And I think definitely for next year's Valentine's Day episode, we'll have you on, since you officially got hired by with CART at near the end. Well, we can delve in a little bit more.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I'll tell some of those stories as well. So
yeah,
that'll be fun.
So yes, no, we will definitely do this again. So again, thank you so much. And if you guys have not checked out the ChampWeb.net Twitter, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's got great videos of new races, great videos of old races, and it's just another place to talk with other fans.
Yeah.
People who agree with you, people who don't, have some nice some nice discourse.
Yeah. Excellent.
You said it better than I did. That's great.
All right. Well, Don, thanks so much. Have a great rest of your Sunday.